Hi, this is Elliot Haspel and welcome to another edition of Best Practices Weekly. Today we're going to be talking about using technology to teach vocabulary, and this comes from an article in The Reading Teacher in which two university instructors, including one from Vanderbilt University, talk about how we can use vocabulary to go beyond the traditional modes of teaching vocabulary and really get students deeply engaged and invested in learning new words and ultimately accelerate their learning. So, this article included 10 strategies for using technology to teach vocabulary, but I picked up 4 which I think are particularly applicable and particularly novel. So, the first one is the idea of visual representations of words in text. And a lot of vocabulary, obviously, is about relationships between words and being able to understand how words work together. And there are free sites on the internet that let you actually input text, and they'll come up with a word cloud or a word map that will show the frequency of words. And the site, for example, www.wordle.net is one of these. And all of these websites I talk about today is on the article, that if you do the full article download, you get links to all of them, and I really recommend that you do that, since I'm going to be talking about a lot of different websites, and I'm not going to list every URL. So, a word cloud, for example, for the 3 little pigs, I made a small one where you might see like pigs is the most common word, wolf is a pretty common word, and house, and then smaller words like huff and puff and blow. And that can be a great way to talk to students about the way words work together. Why do we think that pigs is the biggest word, the most frequent word, and what does huff and puff, and what do they probably mean in that context if they're constantly coming up with regards to the house and regards to the wolf? And so using visual representations of words in text is something that technology lets us do. It can be a really interesting way to engage with students about the idea of how words work together. And also, as sort of an aside, I think gets you an opportunity to talk about some reading comprehension points, also like main idea. The second idea that the authors talk about is this idea of a digital vocabulary field trip. And a vocabulary field trip is, without the internet, is when a teacher gives students a bunch of different texts about one particular topic, say reptiles, and then students look through the text for various vocabulary words or keywords, record them, and then everyone comes back together as a class to discuss, to categorize the words into conceptual areas, and to ultimately do some word work with them to see about we can break down words, prefixes, suffixes, definitions, things like that. With an online or digital vocabulary field trip, though, what the authors are talking about here is that you actually have sites on the internet where you as the teacher can compile different websites on the same topic and then actually make little notes for your students, and then let students literally take themselves through the websites. And so an example they gave is they did a project on the Alaskan weather, so weather in Alaska, in which there were websites that they culled together on the Iditarod and dog sledding, on the Aurora Borealis, in addition to just weather patterns in Alaska. By letting students work their way through these websites with the guidance of notes the teachers have put in, again, students can pull out keywords, and they can really then come back together as a class and talk about these words that they've pulled out and the interesting vocabulary words they found that they didn't know what they meant. And it's just this really rich source of information for students to really work on developing their lexicons and also really work on, again, reading comprehension. A third idea they have is this idea of letting students use multimedia to show their own vocabulary knowledge. And I think traditionally we do a lot of fun things with kids. We have them act out vocabulary words, we have them make up silly sentences, things like that. The authors are talking about here is there's also a world in which they can use technology to really display their knowledge, whether that's making a podcast about a word, whether that is actually making a PowerPoint slide where they they choose a picture and then they make a caption on that slide that shows the meaning of the word. Things like that. And again, little videos. There's so many different ways to use technology to let students, again, really take agency over their own vocabulary learning and really find really creative ways to display their knowledge. The fourth of the strategies is by far the most straightforward and something I think many of us already do, which is this idea of using online vocabulary games. But there are some good websites that they pull out as being particularly strong here, and again, I would encourage you to download the full article and the Teacher's Companion, which will have all of these website URLs listed and linked right there, so you don't have to worry about figuring them out yourself. So that's all for this week. Happy teaching, and we'll talk again soon.